When you think of the Wild West, what flashes through your mind? Dusty towns, tense standoffs at high noon, gunslinging outlaws squaring off in the streets, cowboys riding into blood-red sunsets, the saloon doors swinging open with a loud creak. Thanks to Hollywood, these images have become legendary. But have you ever wondered how much of what we see on the silver screen actually happened? If you love uncovering the real stories behind the myths, make sure to smash that subscribe button, like this video, and ring the bell so you never miss a ride into forgotten history. Surprisingly, a lot more than you'd expect. Sure, Western films added drama and larger-than-life characters, but at their core, many iconic moments are firmly rooted in truth. From infamous duels to daring stagecoach robberies, from lawless frontier towns to the rugged spirit of the cowboys, the real Wild West was every bit as wild, and sometimes even wilder, than Hollywood ever portrayed. So saddle up and hang on tight, because we're diving deep into 10 facts Hollywood actually got right about the Wild West. And trust me, some of these will change the way you see Western movies forever. All right, partner, let's hit the trail. Gunfights really did happen, but they were rare and personal. One of the most iconic images of the Wild West is the classic duel. Two men standing face to face under the scorching sun, hands hovering near their six-shooters, a silent crowd holding its breath. Hollywood has turned these moments into art, slow-motion standoffs, the glint of a silver badge, the deadly twitch of a finger. But were these cinematic gunfights actually a thing? Surprisingly, yes, but not as often or exactly as the movies show. Take the gunfight at the OK Corral, one of the most famous real shootouts in American history. On October 26, 1881, in Tombstone, Arizona, Lawmen Wyatt Earp, Virgil Earp, and Doc Holliday squared off against the outlaw Clanton and McClory brothers. The fight lasted just 30 seconds, but it became the defining symbol of frontier justice. Despite the legends, actual duels were relatively rare. The Wild West was dangerous, but most violence wasn't clean, honorable, or staged in the town square. Instead, fights were messy, sudden, and personal. Grudges over land, cattle, or gambling debts often ended in bloodshed. Alcohol-fueled brawls in saloons, ambushes in back alleys, or ambushes on the trail were far more common than two men drawing at high noon. Firearms like the Colt single-action army revolver, nicknamed the Peacemaker, were popular tools of the trade. Everyone carried guns openly, and reputations could mean life or death. While Hollywood dramatized the ritual of the gunfight, it got the essence right. The West was a place where a single bullet could end a life, settle a feud, or create a legend. And every time you see a showdown on screen, know that somewhere out there, a real man once stood, hand twitching nervously over his gun, heart pounding, ready to decide his fate in the blink of an eye. And that's just the beginning. Because when it comes to cowboys were real, and they weren't all white. Hollywood loves the image of the rugged, stoic white cowboy, a lone rider silhouetted against a fiery sunset, his hat low, his boots dusty, a six-shooter on his hip. But the truth about the American cowboy is even richer and far more diverse. After the Civil War, America's vast frontier demanded workers to herd cattle, drive them to distant markets, and tame the open range. And who answered that call? Not just white men. Historical records show that 1 in 4 cowboys was black. Many more were Mexican vaqueros, Native Americans, and mixed-race frontiersmen. The very roots of cowboy culture, the way they roped cattle, wore boots, and rode horses, came directly from Mexican vaquero traditions dating back to the Spanish colonization of the Americas. Men like Nat Love, a former slave turned famed cowboy, and Bose Icard, a black trail driver who became a legend in Texas, lived real lives of rugged adventure that Hollywood rarely showed. Cowboys endured brutal conditions, days under the relentless sun, freezing nights sleeping under stars, stampedes, cattle rustlers, and deadly river crossings, isolation stretching for months across the plains. Their work was physically exhausting, emotionally taxing, and profoundly dangerous. But it built the West. Hollywood got the spirit of the cowboy right, the independence, the courage, the hardship. But it whitewashed the reality. The cowboy brotherhood was multiracial, and their stories deserve to be told. So next time you see a lone rider disappear into the sunset, remember, his ancestors may have spoken Spanish, prayed in Navajo, or sung in African folk songs. The West belonged to them too. And speaking of places that really felt like the Wild West, saloons were the heart of town life. Picture this. Swinging doors creak open. Piano music drifts lazily through the smoky air. Rough men slam whiskey shots down at the bar. Cards are shuffled, money changes hands, a fist fight breaks out in the corner. You've just stepped into a Wild West saloon, one of Hollywood's favorite backdrops, and guess what? It's not far from the truth. In the frontier towns springing up across the American West, Saloons weren't just bars, they were lifelines. In many remote towns, a single saloon served as a hotel for weary travelers, a gathering place for local politics, a gambling den where fortunes changed hands, a brothel in the back rooms, and the unofficial newspaper and message board of the town. The saloon was where ranchers struck deals, where cowboys blew their wages, and where outlaws and sheriffs brushed shoulders, sometimes peacefully, sometimes not. And the whiskey? Let's just say it wasn't aged in oak barrels. Most frontier whiskey was little more than grain alcohol mixed with tobacco, turpentine, and river water. Still, it did the trick. Hollywood nailed the rowdy energy of these places, the noise, the tension, the thin line between laughter and violence. Saloon life captured the wild, unpredictable nature of the West itself. One moment you were clinking glasses in celebration, the next you were ducking flying chairs and dodging gunfire. In many ways, the saloon wasn't just the heart of the town, it was the town's soul. Wild, raw, dangerous, and alive. Stagecoach robberies and outlaws were real threats. Masked bandits, galloping horses, a stagecoach screeching to a halt under the burning desert sun. It's one of the most thrilling images Hollywood has ever given us. And this time, it's absolutely true. During the mid to late 1800s, stagecoach robberies plagued the American frontier. Traveling by stagecoach wasn't just uncomfortable, it was downright dangerous. Stagecoaches carried everything gold and silver shipments, payrolls for remote army forts, important mail and personal fortunes. For outlaws, a lumbering stagecoach moving slowly across rugged terrain was the perfect target. Famous gangs like the Dalton brothers, the James Younger gang, and Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch perfected the art of the stagecoach heist. They would plan attacks along isolated stretches of road, ambush the drivers, demand the cash, the goods, and sometimes even personal valuables from passengers. The phrase riding shotgun, it wasn't just a saying. Stagecoach companies hired armed guards to sit next to the driver with a loaded shotgun across their lap, ready to blast would-be robbers. Hollywood captured the chaos, fear, and adrenaline of these real-life holdups. Though in reality, most robbers wanted the goods, not the passengers. Violence was a last resort. Outlaws didn't just rob stagecoaches for fun. For some, it was a desperate act of survival in a lawless land. Stagecoach robberies symbolized the dangerous, uncertain promise of the West. Fortunes could be made or lost at gunpoint. Lawmen and marshals were legendary figures, badges flashing, boots pounding wooden sidewalks, a sheriff stepping into the dusty street, staring down an outlaw. Classic Hollywood? Yes, but also historical reality. Lawmen like Wyatt Earp, Bat Masterson, and Wild Bill Hickok weren't fictional inventions. They were real men who became legends. Frontier towns like Tombstone, Dodge City, and Deadwood grew so fast that lawlessness ran rampant. Shootings, gambling, drunken brawls, horse theft. It was up to a handful of brave and often flawed individuals to enforce order. Armed with little more than a badge and a revolver, marshals and sheriffs arrested outlaws, mediated deadly feuds, protected settlers and businesses. But being a lawman wasn't about glory. It was brutal, lonely, and deadly. Many lawmen operated under impossible odds. Few backup, corrupt town councils, and the constant risk of getting gunned down. While Hollywood sometimes paints them as infallible heroes, the truth is more complicated. Some lawmen were corrupt, some were killers in their own right, others became folk heroes because they fought with integrity. But either way, the essence Hollywood captured, the badge-wearing lawman facing down chaos, was 100% real. Without these legendary figures, the West might have remained wild far longer. Their courage and brutality helped tame one of the roughest chapters in American history. Women of the West were tough and independent. Delicate damsels, silent homemakers waiting to be rescued. Think again. The real women of the Wild West were anything but helpless. While early Westerns pushed women to the sidelines, the reality is that frontier women were absolute powerhouses. Women like Annie Oakley, who became a world-famous sharpshooter, Calamity Jane, who lived as a gunslinger, scout, and adventurer, Pearl Hart, one of the few female stagecoach robbers. But the unnamed everyday women were just as tough. Homesteading families depended on women to build cabins, tend crops, hunt and trap, defend their homes against wildlife, and sometimes outlaws. Life on the frontier was grueling. It demanded independence, resilience, and courage. In many frontier towns, women also ran businesses, owned land, managed trading posts and hotels, worked as doctors, teachers, and midwives. Sure, Hollywood took time to catch up, but modern westerns like True Grit, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and Godless finally give women the spotlight they deserve. Women of the Wild West weren't sidekicks or background characters. They were survivors, pioneers, and warriors in their own right. Their grit helped forge the spirit of the American frontier, and without them, the West would never have been tamed. And if you think the West was wild, wait until you hear how it nearly wiped out entire civilizations. The Native American conflict was a harsh reality. In the old Western films, Native Americans were often depicted as either ruthless enemies or mystical side characters. But the truth is far more devastating and far more important to understand. The conflicts between Native American tribes and settlers were not fictional embellishments. They were harsh, bloody, and deeply tragic realities. As settlers expanded westward, pushed by the promises of land, gold, and manifest destiny, they encroached on indigenous territories. Treaties were made and broken. Sacred lands were seized. Buffalo herds, the lifeblood of many plains tribes, were systematically slaughtered. The results were catastrophic. Entire tribes were displaced. Cultures and languages were decimated. Epidemics of smallpox, measles, and other diseases ravaged populations. Wars like the Sioux Wars, the Apache Wars, and the tragic Trail of Tears etched scars across the landscape. Early Hollywood painted a simple, one-sided picture. But more recent films, like Dances with Wolves, Hostels, and The Revenant, have worked to correct that narrative. They show the complexity of Native American societies, their resilience, their warrior spirit, their profound connection to the land. The battles weren't just fights over territory, they were fights for survival, identity, and existence. Hollywood finally got something right. The American frontier wasn't just a place of opportunity for settlers, it was a battleground of resistance and loss for Native peoples. Remember this, the Wild West wasn't just won, it was taken, often by force. The gold rush was a mad scramble for wealth. There's gold in them hills. That cry launched one of the greatest human migrations in history, and Hollywood didn't exaggerate the chaos it unleashed. When gold was discovered at Sutter's Mill in California in 1848, it set off the gold rush of 1849. Within months, hundreds of thousands of prospectors, known as 49ers, poured into the West from across America and the world. Boom towns like San Francisco, Deadwood, and Virginia City exploded overnight. Tent cities sprang up in muddy fields. Saloons and gambling halls outnumbered churches. Fortunes were made and lost, sometimes within a single day. Most prospectors found little or no gold. Instead, the real money was made by those who sold supplies, ran taverns, or staked claims early. The gold rush wasn't romantic. It was dirty, dangerous, and lawless. Violence was common. Claim jumping, theft, and deadly duels over gold were part of daily life. Hollywood's portrayal of grimy, desperate men in worn-out boots scrambling through dust and mud? Spot on. The gold rush didn't just build cities. It built the mythology of the West itself, a place where dreams glittered like gold dust and vanished just as fast. The gold rush showed the best and worst of human ambition, and Hollywood captured that madness almost perfectly. Frontier towns really were lawless. For a while, no sheriff, no law, only survival. That's the picture Hollywood paints of frontier towns, and guess what? It's absolutely true. As settlers surged westward, they built towns almost overnight. Mining camps, railroad depots, cattle boom towns, but law enforcement lagged behind. For months or even years, many frontier towns existed without judges, jails, police. In the absence of authority, vigilante groups formed. They dished out justice with gunfights, lynch mobs, and public hangings. Towns like Dodge City, Deadwood, and Tombstone were notorious for violence. Saloons, gambling halls, and brothels thrived. Shootouts erupted over poker games, stolen cattle, or personal grudges. In some places, criminal gangs, like the James Younger Gang, essentially ran the town. It wasn't until railroads, banks, and commerce demanded stability that formal law enforcement arrived. Marshals and sheriffs were hired, courts were built, and civilization slowly pushed back the chaos. Hollywood's vision of rugged, lawless towns where life hung by a thread, 100% authentic for a time. The frontier wasn't tamed in a day. It was wrestled into order by blood, sweat, and sheer will. Until then, every town was its own little kingdom of dust and danger. The West was built on dreams and dust. Hollywood loves to show the West as a land of freedom and endless opportunity. And while there's some romanticism, at its core, that spirit was very real. For millions, the West offered a second chance, escaping poverty, fleeing oppression, chasing fortune. Homesteaders braved unknown lands to plant crops in unforgiving soil. Miners dug deep into dangerous mountains hoping for gold. Cowboys herded cattle across thousands of miles. The West was a brutal place. Harsh weather, violent clashes, crushing loneliness. But despite the hardship, they kept going. The dream of the frontier, the belief that hard work and courage could carve a new life from the wilderness, defined a generation. Hollywood captures the dust, the blood, and the beauty because those who lived it truly believed. The West wasn't just a place, it was a promise. The legacy of the Wild West isn't just about outlaws and gold. It's about the enduring power of dreams. Dreams that forged a nation. Dreams that still echo today. So next time you sit down to watch a Western, whether it's a black and white classic or a modern epic, know this: you're not just watching fantasy, you're seeing the truth, dressed in dust and legend. The Wild West was real, the stories were real, and the spirit of adventure that built a nation still rides with us today. If you love this journey through real Wild West history, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Got a favorite Western movie or legend? Drop it in the comments. We might cover it next. Until then, partner, keep your boots dusty, your aim steady, and your dreams wild.